I actually have a great pleasure in introducing the next two guests because Bastian has a great passion for the small local businesses, which is something that I myself have. So he has built an on-demand delivery company for small local businesses, and he actually calls his own company the anti-Amazon. Bastian from Postmates, and he's going to be speaking with Nabeel Hyatt from Spark Capital, and Spark Capital is one of Silicon Valley's long-standing big VCs invested in Twitter, Slack, Trello, and many, many more. So let's give a big startup grind welcome to Bastian and Nabeel. Okay, woo!
Hello.
Hey, everybody. Okay.
Hello, Nabeel.
Hey, Bastian.
Hi.
So we're going to get to all of your recent hypergrowth and how you've managed to grow really fast while still actually increasing margins, which I think about the only company in the on-demand space doing that. We'll get to all that in a minute. I want to back up, though, first, and let's start somewhere near the beginning, because you were not a Harvard or Stanford guy hanging out with all of his buddies. You didn't come out of Google. You just touched down in the middle of San Francisco with not a whole lot of a network. And, you know, sometimes this area can feel a little insular. So I'd love for you to talk about, you know, that first year that you got here, and how did you meet people? How did you meet Sean, your co-founder? How did things get started?
Yeah, you know, it felt a bit. First of all, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for coming, hanging out. We hope that we can make this interactive and fun. So if you guys don't like what we're talking about, just scream,
boo.
your topic, and then we can change everything around. It's pretty good because for 20 minutes you're like in charge when you sit here, which is quite funny, right? But we want to make it so that it's entertaining for everyone. So how did I get here? Well, the first thing is that I wanted to be in the US all my life, as long as I can remember, 14 or 15 years, since I'm 14 or 15 years. Now, the problem is that, you know, in Germany I dropped out of college, so, you know, getting a regular education visa wasn't that easy for me. So it took me a little bit longer to arrive in the States, but I think it's fair to say I was obsessed by the culture, by how companies getting built or have been built in San Francisco and in the Valley, and I felt that this would be a great place for me. You know, I always thought that I could make it here at some point. So how it happened is that, you know, obviously spent a lot of time in Munich, then I moved to London, so I got to know the startup scene there a little bit. And I got a phone call from Thomas Korte, who actually runs AngelPad. AngelPad, they prepared to do their first batch at the time. And he had heard my name coming up from 2 or 3 people he knew. And he said, look, I know you guys are working on something, me and my co-founder Sam. And he said, I'll give you a little bit of capital. I would love to have a German in the batch because he's German as well. And I'll help you get started in the US. I'll introduce you to some people, and we do this 3-month program together. And I don't really care what you're working on because I think, you know, you're the type of guy who's eventually going to figure it out. So me and Sam joined AngelPad, and we were working on a different idea back then. Basically, Twitter moments. We called it curated by. And I think, you know, there was like, we had a few thousand customers, but we all kind of knew that it's not a product that ultimately would become successful.
And during this time period, so you moved to the U.S., where you know, so you know Sam, you probably know the rest of the AngelPad crew because you're all hanging out together, and then are you going to cocktail parties, conferences? Like, how are you connecting to build the team? How are you meeting angel investors? How did you get yourself integrated?
Yeah, so.
Or did you?
Well, I don't like to do a lot of the networking stuff. So I actually rarely ever attended a networking party or would hang out after work. I always liked it more to, like, you know, have your heads down and work on the product, work on the team. But we met Sean, our third co-founder, because he was also part of AngelPad. He was working at a company called Hug Energy, and they were on the mission to develop the world's most advanced power strip. I think maybe the vision was a little bit too advanced, so they didn't quite figure it out. But you know, Sam and I fell in love with Sean, and after about 6 months, I convinced him to co-found Postmates with me and Sam.
Yeah, yeah. And so you ran Postmates for how long before you guys went out to try and raise your Series A?
Ooh, it was over a year, I think. It was over a year. We had our seed funding fairly quickly. Which is a funny story in itself, because I met Nabeel, who runs AngelList, and we tried to convince him to invest in Curated By, but you know, in his very friendly way, he said something like, "Never,
right?
Ever will that happen?" But at the same time, he had a job offer for us, and he said, "Hey, why don't you and Sam join AngelList as venture hackers?" And I had to decline that, and I said, "That's not going to happen either." Because we felt like that we had just something in us. So when we started working on Postmates, a concept that was actually 5 years older, but one of these ideas that I just never worked on, he was the first person we went to, and we met him for 5 minutes, and he wrote a check. I think it was $250,000 in that meeting.
Yeah, that's great. That's amazing.
Which was great.
Yeah.
And then he introduced us to, which was great, yes. But we had a product that was working. So I mean, we're not presenting just the idea. I think the very first version of Postmates was basically working at the time we showed it to him. Until then, we were bootstrapped. We did some design work. Sam did some engineering work for other teams from AngelPad, who all got funding. So we were one of those startups that didn't get a lot of follow-on funding. And so we had to work, and we just hustled and did design work and engineering work for other startups.
So that was the early side, but then now you got Nabeel on your side. You got a launched product that's growing somewhat, and you go into an A round. And how did that go? Well,
the A round, that wasn't a nice experience at all. I mean, after having such a good time raising the seed round, I think in total it was 1.2 million or something, which was great. I mean, today you raise like 5 million seed or something pre-launch. But what happened is that we were really confident. Postmates was out there. The first version, we got some buzz. We had some solid numbers, but on a very small level, right? So we went out, and a lot of the VCs that we talked to, they just didn't want to invest. And I think the best read that I have on the situation today is that if you remember 2011, there was nothing comparable to Postmates out there at the time. Yeah. So there was no competitor. There was really, the only thing that you could compare it to was like ride sharing. Uber and Lyft just started as well. But a lot of VCs that we talk to, I believe, VCs have a little bit of this herd mentality, right? Totally. If they see a topic, they run on it, and they all try to place their bets. But if you're presenting and showing them something that maybe is not as obvious, there's no comparables in the market, the last thing that is your company is comparable to is Cosmo.com, or a big thing that didn't work out. So there was a lot of caution there. I think people wanted to believe the vision, but the numbers weren't obviously not big enough to back that up. So it took us a while, but eventually Founders Fund came through and did our Series A.
And then after the Series A, it's been completely smooth sailing, right?
Well, the day after the Series A, we had a phone call that they had some, what happened is that I think Founders Fund did some similar investments, and as a result of that, we thought that we have someone from Founders Fund join the board, but that didn't happen. So it wasn't smooth sailing, because what we were looking forward to on the Series A is we thought that we could get a strong person on the board that helps us with a firm that can have our back for the years to come. But sometimes these things don't work out the way they do. However, we found a great person to join the board, basically representing Founders Fund, and that's Scott Bannister, who probably some of you know is an amazing guy, founder of Ironport, and very successul investor and startup guy.
So I wanted to lay that out, because I think when I think about Postmates and I think about who you guys are today, I think it's because of all that early turmoil and this was not a company that was forged from, hopping straight into YC, raising a massive seed round from tier 1 guys that are just coming to rush in. You guys,
it was a fucking struggle most of the time.
Yeah.
For like a good, it is true, for like a good 4 years. I mean, now of course, it's fun to look back at that if things are going well, but it was a massive grind for 4 years for just a small group of people that believed in that. At the same time, doom is constantly impending by Amazon or Uber or everybody else crushing you, and so yeah, I think on the flip side, no, we're kind of battle-proof a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah, and somehow over the last year, you've managed, you're managing a 3-sided marketplace, between the merchants, the restaurants, and other vendors, the consumers who are ordering, and the couriers, which is quite a bit harder than managing a 2-sided marketplace, which is already the double black diamond of startup. So, like, how do you think that early experience, those early trials and tribulations, have helped you guys to grow what is a very complicated business while still actually growing it with growing gross margins as well, like actually maintaining a good unit economics model?
Well, yeah. Well, so when it comes to the unit economics, or when it comes to your to the metrics of your startup, of your company, I think a really important thing that a lot of companies, in my opinion, do a poor job on is really understanding what influences each one of your unit economics and how you can improve them, or how you can invest money that you're making at any one of these numbers, and how you can control it. So if you have an understanding of that, and if you're very honest about the unit economics in general and about your gross profit margin, then you understand what tools you have to tweak. And so what that means is, let's just say that for us, the fleet payouts, courier payouts, obviously part of our unit economics, dictate our gross profit margin. Mm-hmm. What can you do to either improve that as a gross profit margin for the company, or what can you do at the flip side to improve the money that the couriers make, the fleet makes? If you start looking at that very early on, you understand that just pouring money on one or the other side is not going to make it, right? You can spend a fortune on courier acquisition, but then you have a really bad gross profit margin. Right. So the right thing to do is probably to invest in the efficiency of the fleet. I'm using this as an example. If you ask the real question, if you make decisions, from a first principle perspective, you'll be able to do the right things for the business and grow it carefully at the right time, and at the same time maintaining your gross margins. But I also like to say that I think the most important thing as a founder, you probably just want to not listen to everybody tell you how you should run your business. Because if I had to take on face value every single advice that I got from you, or from any other VC for that matter, Postmates wouldn't be here. Over the last 24 months, everybody told us that the only thing that matters is growth, hyper growth, grow even faster. Right. Screw it, you have 20% gross profit margin. Go away with it. Just invest it all in your fleet growth. And at the last fundraise, we probably had, I don't know, probably could have had a valuation of 150 million more if we would have followed that advice. What happens 2 months later? We have a readjustment of values, at least a little bit, here in the Valley with startups. People are now looking at gross profit margins. Companies that were running for the last 2 years on hypergrowth now struggle to explain how they're ever going to make money, because it is very difficult to believe a company that just turns into positive gross profit margin 1 month before the fundraise. It just doesn't look right. So while we lost a little bit of the valuation game, I believe, over the last 2 years, it was good for the company going forward. And that was just one of those things that we always fundamentally believed in. We wanted to show that this can be a profitable company soon, and that we can have strong gross profit margins. And you need to decide that, and you need to know that, and you need to be able to tell your board that, and your co-founders that, and your marketing people, or your growth team, or the people that do whatever you need to do in order to grow the company. That I believe is a fundamental job of a CEO, to look at these numbers and to not let it spiral out of control or drink too much of the Kool-Aid. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great place to stop. Thanks so much, man. That was it already? Yeah. 20 minutes. All right, good. Thanks a bunch. That's all we got.